And we're back with a special edition of the Two Sour Show post E3. I am Brian.
And I'm Dane.
And hopefully I fixed my audio this time.
Right? Technical difficulties. The beauty of the new world we're moving into.
The computer turned on all the microphones last time. Like my earbud microphone, my camera microphone, this microphone.
And it was a mess.
Oh God,
it was bad.
I was so like you weren't here. Like I got up that morning because usually the way I put it together is the audio podcast is I get up in the morning, the next day, and I come in and I download your audio and then cut it in to Audition, and I put in my audio and I pulled in my audio and went to sync up the beginning and was like, what?
Yeah.
No. Why?
Yeah, that was rough. I can try to work some magic on some audio stuff, but I heard that, and the little bit of magic bad. I tried to get, basically, it did not.
I was amazed at how well you managed to like save that, because oh my God, the audio I got on my end was so god awful. Just absolutely atrocious.
Luckily,
I think I got it set now so that I hopefully won't be cruelly disappointed.
Luckily, the nice part too is the new way we're doing things is we have our audio we're each recording, but I also have the lovely audio from this lovely thing that we're doing now with the video. So it's a nice little feature we've gotten, a nice little way I was able to find that. But that's the other big thing we've been teasing for quite a while, is getting into doing this and putting ourselves on camera for everyone and everything. And we figured this would be the best way to do it. It's going to be a short, sweet recap of E3 and basically our highlights for it. I know we basically watched all the trailers. We watched everything as they went through. We pretty much watched quite a few of them live. You saw a couple more live than I did. The biggest one.
Yeah, I tried to watch them all as I got lucky. My schedule changed at the beginning of E3, so I had basically all 5 days off. So
which you were lucky. I had to sit through work and sit through meetings and like catch the recaps at the end of the day, or there was a couple I was able to catch live, but most of them were like end of day recaps, and then seeing social media between break, 5-minute break between meetings I have was like, oh, okay, this game got announced. Okay, cool. And
I don't know. Some of the stuff I had to sit through to get to any good stuff. I don't know who was luckier on that one.
Yeah, the one that I was able to jump on was the Capcom one. That was a giant letdown, which again, I was hoping, they were my big hope for Resident Evil 4, and nothing. No dice.
Well, let's do a quick run through the whole week. So I mean, it started off with the like kind of pre-show, which was and I can't remember whether did we talk. I think we talked about it a little bit.
We touched on it briefly,
with the Jeff Keighley thing and his summer of games, and there was a couple of games on that. The Metal Slug Tactics, which I'm super looking forward to,
and then Elden Ring, which is whatever the internet went
Elden
crazy
Ring,
for,
which I don't care, because I'm not a big fan of.
Me neither. Just games,
Souls games.
Yeah, this were hard because we want to make it hard on someone, and those games are made just for the simple fact of for the accessories and people breaking controllers. That's all they're made for. That's it.
Yeah, and then the other thing was the Tiny Tina's Wonderland.
Oh yeah, the Borderlands spinoff.
The side Borderlands spinoff thing where it's like Borderlands, but also with like magic and dragons in a fantasy world. So I'm pretty stoked on that, because I like Borderlands. So I'm curious about that one. But then we get into E3 proper. We start off with Ubisoft, and really, and to an extent, I feel bad for them, because some poor intern at Nintendo oopsied and put the page for Mario Rabbids 2 up like that morning. So it completely undercut their like big like whoa moment.
Yeah, and that was one of the games that Ubisoft probably didn't want to get released early, because that one did well. It's one of the few games from Ubisoft people still like, and they're not burnt out on. So yeah,
there wasn't much at Ubisoft. Like I don't really care about military shooters, so I like Far Cry 6.
It's every. I played Far Cry 5, which is the same as Far Cry 4, which is gonna be the same as Far Cry 6.
Yeah, the only ones I even liked was Blood Dragon and Primal.
Yeah, because they were different.
But I couldn't care about that. Just Dance, like they do one every year.
Exactly.
They teased an Avatar game. And I have no idea what it is. The trailer alluded to like a first person thing, but maybe you can play as either side.
I'm thinking it's going to be like
so I'm not sure.
That's my guess. That would make sense because think of how Assassin's Creed is laid out. You have
Far Cry.
The real world and then the fantasy world, and the past. And this way you have the real world and then the Avatar world. That's my guess.
I don't know.
So
I don't know what they're doing with it.
Right.
I'm curious though. It at least got me curious as to what they will do with an Avatar video game.
Right, that's the same here. So.
You know, especially since they're obviously going to have to watch what they tell as far as any kind of story with the like Avatar sequels coming fairly soon.
Right.
So I'm just kind of curious, like how they're balancing like what kind of story they can tell and what kind of game it is. So at least got me curious.
Right.
I'm not the biggest Avatar fan. I do owe it a rewatch because I was so jaded to it when I first watched it that I just kind of like sat there, arms folded, like,
right.
This
is what's making $1 billion. Okay.
Yeah. So I owe it a more proper watch, but I'm at least curious about that. Everything else on Ubisoft's slate I didn't care about. Expansions to Valhalla and Watch Dogs and stuff that's already out. And,
the usual stuff, yeah.
But they at least had one game that I am actively excited for, and then one game that I'm at least curious, but the rest of their presentation was bleh.
Yeah. And then what else? It was just Ubisoft the one day, right? My list of everything I had disappeared.
I think so.
I had a list from everything I had before, and my computer reset, and it's gone. And I'm like, oh, well, all right, that's.
Well, the problem is that so much of it was just hot trash.
Yeah, it was forgettable. That's the problem with it. I mean, that's kind of the overall arc of E3 this year. It was
Microsoft and Nintendo had the best showing. I mean, let's get with it, just the straight up trash. I mean,
Square Enix was garbage.
Take-Two completely pooched it.
Yeah.
I get what they were trying to do, and I'm not going to sit there and judge whether or not it was a worthy cause or not, because obviously it's not like I'm some big, anti-diversion and inclusion and, equality guy. I'm not one of those guys, but time, place. And this was not the time nor the place to have an hour-long Zoom meeting unless you were going to broadcast it far and wide from like weeks ago, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're using our time to do this. Then, okay. But, when you don't say anything and then you get to the day and you're like, oh, well, we're not actually showing games. We're having this discussion on DE&I. And you do it in the driest way possible.
Yeah.
Like they could have worked it all together and been like, look, here is what we're doing as a company. Here are the games that are being made right now. This is what we're working on. And look at the diversity. Look at, how we're being inclusive and how you build characters and the people on our teams, and show as a company that you actually are doing something other than just having a Zoom call lecturing people.
Yeah. That
because I'm one of those people that if you're preaching to me and I'm already agreeing with you, and I'm already like, yes, it's a good thing, then I just get annoyed because I'm just like, yes, I know. Can I please get a moment of escape, please?
Right. We play video games to get away from the real world, not to have the real world invade into the video games that we play, unless that's what we go for. But again, that kind of defeats the purpose.
Right. I just think it was poorly done, and it's not like you converted anybody over by doing that. It's not like any like hardcore far right guy was watching this and going like, oh, that's what you mean. Like, no. They tuned out the minute that they found out there was no video games.
Yeah, that was
like you did not win any battles doing that.
Far from it. And again, it was on paper great idea. Don't get me wrong, great idea there, but not the place, not the time.
Well, And if you were watching IGN was touching on this throughout the weekend, but doing it in a very tactful way, where they would have these moments in between panels with little things, with people, whether it's Aaron from Game Grumps or other gamers popping in and
Right.
saying stuff. That's how you do it during something like this, not an hour-long dry Zoom call.
It didn't work.
We got lit up.
Yeah.
They got nuclear heat online.
Yeah. As it should be the case, because it's, again, wrong time, wrong place for something like that. Again, great idea.
Wrong format.
Yeah.
Oof. There was a way to do it, but that wasn't it.
Nope. But then on the other hand, like we were talking about, you had Xbox, who on any other year, or like 2-3 years ago, we would have just went, oh, okay, it's Xbox. They did pretty good. But this year, considering the rest of every release they had, everything else that was going out, they blew everyone out of the water, which was good to see. But at the same time, it was kind of disappointing because of the simple fact that on an average year, that would have been like a 7, 7 or maybe 7.5 kind of style presentation. But being that everything we saw this year through the whole weekend, but everything we'd seen up to that point in time, they absolutely blew everything out of the water, which was good for Xbox. I'll be honest, like watching the Horizon 5 demo or the Horizon 5 gameplay they showed, I'm probably going to buy an Xbox from that. I've been diehard PlayStation since I don't even know how many years, but seeing that, I'm just like, PlayStation doesn't have anything that's really blowing me away. And the fact that Horizon Forbidden West is going PS4 as well as PS5, for me, that was like the one game I was going to be like, okay, I need a PS5 for. But now that I don't need to do that, no need to buy it. So Horizon looks fantastic. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, just kind of running through the kind of stuff that really kind of, it had me the most excited out of Xbox's presentation. Obviously, I'm very curious about Starfield, but at this point, who isn't?
Right. I'm super excited to see what comes out of that. But again, it will know next year. It's November of 22, so it's holiday of 22. So you've got a full year of hype and a full year of build and a full year of getting it together.
Right.
But it is Bethesda, so it's probably going to ship with a lot of issues because you don't get thanks Bethesda as a meme for just saying every game's perfect. So there's that.
Right. Psychonauts 2, I'm excited for. That looks really good, really fun. The humor looks really good. And it's a nice, big, bright, colorful platformer, which has been sorely missing from any company except for Nintendo. So I'm excited that Microsoft is at least putting one out and putting good support behind it.
Right. They're embracing color, which so many games, like you're saying, don't have the color. Like big game that was announced was Halo Infinite. There was a bit announced, but they had more gameplay of it. But it's dull. It's drab. I mean, Halo's always been like that. But having something colorful,
and most of what they showed was multiplayer. They didn't show any campaign gameplay, so we'll see. I mean, I'm gonna play it. I like Halo,
right. And they're making the multiplayer free to play too, which is great.
Yeah, that's cool. They're bringing Flight Simulator over to the Xbox finally, so I'm excited about that because that just looks like a nice, zone out, very zen kind of relaxing game.
Oh yeah.
And announced a Top Gun tie-in expansion, so I'm curious how that's going to work. Whether it's just flying around in an F-15 or if they're going to put dogfights in there,
which would be cool. But we'll see.
Obviously, Halo Infinite. Forza Horizon 5 obviously had me probably the most hyped just because I love that series, specifically the Horizon. I mean, I like regular bread and butter like Forza, but Horizon is where it's at for me as far as driving games go. Absolutely. So the fact that not only did they surprise announce that, but it's coming out in November as well is huge. And then the big surprise at the end was the cinematic trailer for this game, Redfall.
Yeah, that looked really good.
And oh my god, I'm in. I haven't seen a bit of gameplay footage, but the humor, the tone, the color, because even though it was at night and it was kind of dark because of the it's a horror themed game, I was it was still, there was a lot of color. There was a lot of purple and just bright, colorful effects. And I was just oh, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, no, it looked great. And
like I haven't seen what the gameplay even looks like. I'm like, okay, I'm in.
My
Like,
only
that, like,
guess
you
at it
got me.
is going to be like kind of maybe like a Left 4 Dead kind of vibe, but because of the way they kind of built it up, but at the same time, it doesn't seem the same because it seems
Well, and they're saying it's a like a first person RPG,
yeah, which is
but
really
it's
throwing
an
me off,
open
but
world, so I'm guessing probably more of a Borderlands ish
yeah, that would
kind
make
of
sense.
affair.
Because Borderlands is pretty hot, so
Um,
it's a hot commodity and hot idea. So I don't
well, and
know. It's
Borderlands
going to be
looks
interesting to
fun.
see though.
Yeah.
It's like and
No,
we'll know next.
I'm super curious about that one.
Yeah, and I'll
The
have my
smaller
Xbox
one.
by then, so we can play together too. So
Oh yeah, that'd be dope.
that'd be sick.
A smaller one, sequel to Slime Rancher. Like that's another just kind of
Chill game, yeah.
like
I love the first
chill.
one. It was fun. Nothing
Yeah,
crazy,
well,
nothing
I
ridiculous.
like
Just-
a good chill game. Like I like a game that is just like I can jump in, play it for a bit, and just kind of relax and not have to worry about a 50, 60-hour story and just play. Just nice and chill.
And even after you do finish it, you can still go back and keep doing more stuff because it's just there's end game content and it's just fun to do. So
Yeah, so I'm pretty stoked off of Xbox. I think they had probably the best showing out of anybody.
I'd agree.
And one definitely for coming out of the pandemic era, I think definitely are leading the pack, especially out of the C3.
Yeah.
I think with what they're doing with Game Pass, I mean, and that's the thing, they put out a graphic of all the Game Pass stuff that's coming.
Oh God, yes. It's 27.
Like this year, I mean, there's stuff they didn't show that has been kind of MIA. I mean, there's still stuff like Scorn that's supposed to be coming this year to Game Pass, which is what it looks like David Cronenberg and H.R. Geiger mushed
Oh yeah, that's
together.
right. I forgot about that game. Yeah, that's
So I
supposed to
mean,
be
there's
coming
still
out, too.
stuff like that that's coming, you know. So they had just an absolute solid showcase.
Yeah,
Square was horribly disappointing.
yeah. And they're putting Final Fantasy games on mobile for God's sake. I mean, they did it with like 15. They made it kind of cutesy, but we're putting like the classic Final Fantasies on mobile. Which
Oh,
is
that
dumb.
I've never had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows within a 3-minute trailer for a game ever.
Yeah, and
Like that trailer started and I went, and I think I messaged you, I was just like, yo.
yeah, exactly. It was
And
like,
then, like,
it was
2
super
seconds
legit.
later-
Like I was stoked for it until that
Yeah,
lovely
and, like,
words came out the
my
bottom.
very next message, like this is how quick it was. Like my very next message after a big long yo was, oh fuck.
Yup, and because it said available on mobile, and I just like my face dropped. I was like,
It's Steam and mobile.
yeah,
It's just like,
yeah. It was
why?
just it was bad. I get it.
have
They're
a
trying to appeal to the
perfectly good
mobile audience
Nintendo
and the Steam
Switch.
side, but at the same time, again, it's
Right
like shit.
there.
Put it on Switch. Bam, done. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
You got. I don't know.
No,
Maybe
it
they're
is
like,
the
oh, our
most
next gen
mind-
consoles are too powerful for these games. It's not worth their time. It's like, no, that's the exact reason you have a console is to play games like that because they're classic games and
I'm-
they take up no space.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, there's no reason not to at least put that compilation on Switch. There just isn't. And for them to just only put it on Steam and mobile is just the dumbest decision. About as dumb as the design choices they made in the Final Fantasy Origins game.
Yeah, I have seen so many memes come out about that. It's been hilarious and I love it, but it's a Final Fantasy game that's getting
Well-
raked over the coals, and just like my heart's like, because I grew up
Well,
playing
and
Final
it didn't-
Fantasies.
It didn't click with me at first that this was essentially like a retelling of the first Final Fantasy game, and then the minute that it clicked, I was like, but no.
Yeah, just
Like,
why?
There's no, like, that's how detached that game is from the source material, is that I couldn't even see anything in the design aesthetic that made me go, oh.
Right?
You
It
know.
just. I think the funniest one I sent you was the Final Fantasy, or was it Fast and Furious 9?
Fast and Furious.
That had these Final Fantasy Origins across the bottom, because I saw that and I just
Mhm.
went, I hate how accurate this is, but I think it's hilarious at the same time, just because it's and like every boy band poster out there had, Final Fantasy Origins put on it and just everything from there. I mean, they kind of started that trend with 15 anyway, and now they just kind of continued
Mhm.
the boy band poster trend. And it's just like, why are you guys doing this? Why?
Well, and I just don't understand, like, why now are you just going with this? Because I mean, I've played Final Fantasy 15. I haven't gotten super deep into it, but Final Fantasy 15 wasn't all grim dark.
No, it wasn't.
Like,
I put a
and that
100+
sold
hours into 15.
extremely well, and that sold extremely well. So I don't understand why they are now chasing other franchises. I mean, we said this when they announced Final Fantasy 16, and we were like, this doesn't look like a Final Fantasy game. This looks like a Souls game.
Yeah, and it's
Why are they
dumb.
doing this? And this looks even more like a Souls game. And it's just like,
There's no
who
need for it.
plays a Final Fantasy game for that?
Yeah, there's no need to have something like that in Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is about turn-based. It's about action. It's about blowing stuff up. It's about chocobos. It's not about, you
Well,
know,
even if you wanted to turn it into like a more of an action RPG, because Final Fantasy 15 kind of was.
yeah,
Final Fantasy 7 Remake kind of is. Obviously, Kingdom Hearts is.
yeah,
So even if you wanted to go with that kind of battle system going forward and turn these more into Zelda style, action RPGs, I'm not exactly happy about that, but at least that makes sense. Like, you're just changing the gameplay mechanic. You're still creating something that's decidedly Final Fantasy in the way it looks and sounds and all of that. Completely changing the game to where they're unrecognizable. I mean, the only reason we caught that Final Fantasy 16 was Final Fantasy anything was because Chocobos showed up.
yeah. That was
And we're
it.
like,
That was the only tie we had.
huh.
But we went, oh, okay, that's a Final Fantasy game. That's weird. So yeah, definitely was a head tilt and a what kind of thing for when first announced, and the everything else they've shown has done the same effect. It's like, okay, that's
Yeah, but
okay.
and even their presentation though was still a lot of expansion. I mean, they showed off the new Guardians of the Galaxy game, and
Yeah. I mean, after Avengers, what they put out, they can't really get much worse than that because Avengers just tanked, and they put out like the
well,
whole
and
like
then there
oh
was a
this
bunch of
the DLC
expansions
for
for
it,
that.
but
Yeah,
it's just
like
it,
yeah. So Square was just a
no,
terrible presentation.
yeah, it just nope. Square missed it, like Square
Mm-hmm.
missed, and then you had of course Nintendo. Nintendo is Nintendo. They're happy with
Yeah.
their corner of the world. They have their piece of pie. They have they have their own pie. They don't part of any pie. They just have their own
Mm-hmm.
pie, and they do what they do. And they had a solid showing.
Oh yeah, no WarioWare. I'm excited for.
Right? You have what else? You have getting Doom over there,
I mean
Doom
Mario
Eternal on there. You're getting
Party.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
I mean, the cross-platform stuff I don't really care about. It's more the stuff like, we'll probably pick up the Mario Party
Superstar, I think it's called, or something like that.
whatever it is, the collection,
Yeah.
the one that's got
All of them,
all
yeah.
Mario Party All Stars, I think is what it is.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then WarioWare is a definite. They showed a little more of Mario Golf, which we were already planning on getting. The biggest surprise, obviously, was Metroid Dread.
Yes, that was huge. Which
And
they're going back to the old school style,
there.
the 2D. I mean, this is like it's
Mhm.
2.5D, I think, from the look of it, because they obviously have like more 3D animated backgrounds. But super stoked for it. That looked
Oh, yeah,
really
I am
good.
so ready for that. A little more of Skyward, or not Skyward. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
Skyward
no,
Sword,
they did
the
show a little
Waggle
more
one.
Skyward Sword,
Yeah.
which
Whatever.
biggest mistake,
Yeah.
putting that out and not giving us a way to play at all like a normal Zelda game.
Yeah.
Because even if you're playing with handheld mode, you got to swing it with the thumbstick, and it's just like,
It's
nah,
dumb. It's so
dudes.
bad. That's like that's the one Zelda game that breaks. I have a Zelda tattoo, for God's sakes. That's how much I love Zelda. And this is a game that I refuse to play because of the waggle controls. I absolutely hate those controls. They're the worst thing ever. Like, I get Wii was a gimmick, but the fact that you made a game that was based solely on a gimmick, that's the only way you could play it. No, I'm out. Done.
Yeah, I mean, and that was kind of their big disappointment. Because the Breath of the Wild 2 stuff looks cool, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's Breath of the Wild 2. But I think the biggest kind of downer is the fact that they really aren't doing any kind of collection, or like people kind of had hope for like a Metroid Prime collection for the Metroid anniversary, because you can get the SNES and the NES game through the NES Online and SNES Online function. So there, I think people were kind of hoping for like a collection with like the Game Boy game, maybe the Metroid Prime collection, stuff like that, and maybe some kind of Zelda All Stars like Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. A lot of people were asking for
my money. They do that.
Yeah,
done.
A lot of people were hoping for like a Twilight Princess remaster. Nope. You're getting Skyward Sword HD and a Game & Watch.
Yeah, that's
it. That's all you're getting for the 35th anniversary. Like, there was Mario everything for the 35th anniversary of Mario, which I get, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have done that. I am all for that, but Metroid and Zelda are also two of their other biggest franchises. Even though Metroid has languished in the weird Nintendo horror show that is dealing with their other IPs that aren't an Italian plumber or a small little elf boy.
Yes, or a tiny yellow electric rat.
Yeah, I mean, I that's the only real mind boggler with them is stuff like that. But I mean, other than that, I mean, Nintendo really had just kind of a solid show. Oh, Advance Wars 1 and 2 remake.
Oh, okay.
Stoked about that too.
Nice.
Yeah, so I would definitely say Microsoft, then Nintendo, and then I guess Ubisoft, because Capcom didn't have shit.
Neither did Square. Yeah,
and
I wouldn't even honestly put the other ones really up there, just because they didn't. It all felt so half-assed. It all felt like the whole. I mean, Nintendo. Again, Nintendo does Nintendo. They could do whatever. Xbox, Bethesda. They brought it. They brought it like it would be a normal year of E3, and everybody else kind of just went, here's your stuff, whatever. Here you go, have fun.
Right.
Like,
and the thing that gets me is at this point, Sony isn't there to really make it feel big.
EA's not there.
EA wasn't there. I mean, and not like EA really does much other than like,
here's a new Madden.
Here's
the new FIFA.
NHL,
buy the same game with
FIFA.
a new year on it. That's literally EA's thing.
Yeah. So EA not being there,
but EA does bring a lot of clout to it because they are a big company.
Yeah.
They bring a lot of show.
Sometimes because they own BioWare and they had that deal with Star Wars, although I think that's expiring.
Quietly.
There were those deals there that still they could bring something out or what have you. But I mean, the fact that EA no-showed, the fact that Sony no-showed, the fact that Nintendo basically, other than Metroid Dread and a better look at Breath of the Wild 2, and I guess I would say maybe WarioWare and Advance Wars, but those two are way more niche.
Yeah, exactly. They're not something that everyone. That's not something I would play and my nephew would play, and then my brother would play. It's more of like a me or my nephew only. It's not everyone.
Right. Well, it's not like they brought out some big expansion to Animal Crossing or brought out other here's a new Punch Out, here's a new Kid Icarus, here's Metroid Prime 4, like the big titles everybody's here's a new Star Fox, like the big franchises. It's like, okay, here's party games, here's some more party games, here's a remake of an old GBA game that that's a fairly niche GBA game. So I think that the fact that Nintendo really didn't bring anything, there was no Splatoon 3.
Nothing. Yeah.
And it just didn't feel like anything other than another Nintendo Direct.
Right. Yeah.
And
It was just there. It wasn't quite filler, but it was just a little
Mhm.
more than filler, if that makes any sense.
And really, the big thing with Microsoft and the reason, and a lot of reason they did so well, was the fact that this was the first real presentation that they had since buying Bethesda.
Yeah.
They've had presentations like this within the last 6 months to a year that showcased a good amount of games that you could pick out 4 or 5 and be excited for. I don't know if it's. I just really don't feel like E3 is really even necessary at this point.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It doesn't have the same feel to it that it had, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago. Back when it was huge, it was insiders. It was you had to have the press access. It was only press access, and that was it. And then when they opened up to the public, you had all the demos, you had everything else going on, but they still had a lot of the show to it. And I get that with the whole pandemic and everything, it's kind of hard to still put on a big show. But at the same time, nobody really did much outside of like pre-recorded panels or pre-recorded anything except for the Take Two one. But everything was pre-recorded. Everything was scripted. It was already done. There's no big like Keanu Reeves coming out for Cyberpunk kind of effect. But at the same time, no, there was nothing at all that had that big like ooh like blew me away kind of announcement. It just all of this and everything is so done on its own.
Horizon 5 and Redfall was really the two biggest surprises, and Metroid Dread from Nintendo.
And that's 3 games out of what 70 games, 60 games across the whole thing that they announced.
Something
they went over.
Like that.
So, and that's an abysmal thing to have.
Well, and because a lot of the games that they showed, even if you're like, oh yeah, I really want that game, a lot of the games that they showed were games that you already knew were coming.
Yeah, there was no surprise to it.
And
aside from a couple.
I think, well, and the other problem is that they do many of these throughout the year now. I mean, obviously Nintendo kind of pioneered that with the Directs, where they would do 2, 3 of those a year. Sometimes around a specific release, but sometimes, just kind of here's what we're doing.
Right.
Kind of a bi-yearly check-in. And I think with them doing that, and, Microsoft does that too. They have several virtual events that they do where they break down, like, here's a bunch of games that we're working on. Here's this, here's that, here's this.
Yeah.
And then you have the Video Game Awards, and they do a bunch of reveals at the Video Game Awards. And Sony obviously is now completely jettisoned off E3 and is doing their own thing. Like, to me, E3 anymore just kind of feels like holding on too tightly to nostalgia for gaming in the early 2000s.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
2001, kind of that original G4 era before they merged with Tech TV.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. I mean, that's the exact thing. Is they're holding on to the past because it's the remember the good old days kind of feel. We can bring those good old days back, and it's just like, no, we can't. I mean, the internet has made it so much more information out there now to where any little leak gets blown up, and then companies have to acknowledge it. And there's no surprise, but there's no like keeping it behind closed doors for 6 months, a year, 2 years, aside from maybe 1 or 2 projects. But even then, they still would do their own show for it. They do their own press release. They don't hold on to it. They don't finish a game or finish a trailer in December and wait until June to release it at E3. No, they put it out there February, March, twice a year, 3 times a year, depending on the company. That this is just it's antiquated. There's no need for it anymore. There's no
and
demos
I think it also
anymore.
puts
There's no nothing else. There's no need for it.
Well, and I think also that it puts undue pressure on these guys, because think about if, let's say, Ubisoft, and say they didn't have the Mario Rabbids thing undercut, completely detached of the E3 name, and they go, hey, we're doing this virtual event, we're going to show kind of where we are with some games. And they go through the same games. They show expansions for Valhalla, for Watch Dogs, show off, Far Cry 6 the same way they did, Just Dance. And then all of a sudden they drop Mario Rabbids 2, showing off a cinematic and some gameplay, and then tease an Avatar game from out of nowhere, completely detached from E3, you're going, oh my gosh. Like, whoa, Ubisoft is like...
They're stepping up their game, yeah.
They're stepping up their game. Attached to E3, you're like, yeah, but you had 2 games, one of which somebody already popped the cork on, even if by accident, so we already knew that was coming. Right. And then the only other thing you really had surprising was an Avatar game with no actual gameplay footage.
Yeah.
So, and you didn't even talk about what the game is. You just were like, we're doing an Avatar game.
Here's the name. Here's a picture.
Right.
You're going to want to buy it. And that's it. Yeah, there was nothing to it. There was no anything. Mm-hmm. But yeah, again, exactly like you said, standalone, it's fantastic. But E3 does have that giant bar of, we have to reinvent the wheel somehow for our company at E3, because that's what so many companies have done for so many years.
Right. Well, and that's been the thing is I mean, and obviously we're guilty of it too, like the kind of who won E3 mentality. But, that's been the tradition of E3 for, pretty much the entire modern internet era.
Yeah, last 20 years at least.
I mean, I would say since probably 2003 when, you really started, like, since they started selling DVDs of the conference so that, you could go into GameStop after E3 and buy a DVD showing, so you could watch all the trailers and everything.
Yeah, I remember this. I had a couple of those.
And so did I. And then once G4 started covering it live, and you could just tune into G4, and now, obviously, anybody with an internet connection can, for the last decade, has been able to watch E3 live. So, at this point, it's taken on such a huge risk to, in my mind, for these companies to come out and do these showings. And if they don't have at least one big, like, oh my gosh moment, everybody watches them, and like I said, even we're guilty of it, and going, like, that was lame, that was pointless, why, like, that was a waste, why'd you even bother? Like, I would look at what Square did and be like, why did you even bother with this? You could have just done this
on your own. Yeah.
Capcom definitely was like, why did you even bother?
Yeah.
What was the point? And I think Bandai Namco kind of got the hint, because they immediately changed the title of their thing to that, like, this is just a House of Ashes thing.
Yeah, they just,
like, we ain't talking about anything else.
Right. We're talking this thing only. That's it. Don't get your hopes up. We're just talking on this. Yeah, they pulled a quick
yeah, so I think, I mean, and then Take-Two, obviously, with their thing, to the point where people on Twitter were, like, yelling that Take-Two shouldn't be allowed at E3 anymore.
Yeah, that was...
Like, it's I think, outlived its usefulness, and at this point, welcome. Like, at this point, these companies, like, why bother?
Save the money. Hire another marketing person. Hire another couple designers. Put the money that you spend on...
You have the video game awards, you have the video game awards now, that Jeff Keighley's doing. You can throw a couple trailers, there.
Yeah.
And, okay, cool. And then just do your own thing throughout the year.
Yeah. Hire a good marketing guy online, a good Twitter person.
Well, they already do. That's the thing. They already do these things.
Exactly, which is the craziest part. Then
E3 is completely unnecessary at this point.
Yeah, it is. It's a dinosaur that they're keeping alive on life support for the sake of nostalgia. Remember the good old days, kids, back in my day. Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah, at this point, it's all nostalgia.
Yeah.
And granted, I get that member berries, excitement around E3 time, but at this point, just
pull the plug.
Put 2 in it. Call it good.
Yep.
Move on. It's really not worth it at this point.
Yeah, I agree. It's this year proved it. I know last year, where they've been getting pushed back and canceled, everyone kind of went, oh, we're going to miss out on it. And now they have this. It's kind of like, maybe we didn't miss out on too much, actually. So I think I give it one more year. That's my thing. I give it one more year, see where next year is once everything kind of goes back to maybe the way it was before. see if they bring out more of the stops, more of the entertainment factor of it, of the live factor. Give it one more year, see where it goes. If next year tanks, or if next year's like this, done.
And I think with the change of what Xbox is doing with Game Pass, especially with them looking at like taking it beyond the console to where, you know, you can buy a stick or it's built directly into your smart TV. Like, I think at this point they're going to be putting out so many games onto that platform to get you to buy into the platform and the monthly service that they're just going to be doing little micro events all year long. Yeah. I mean, at that point, what?
Once a quarter, hey, here's what we got. Here's what's coming out. Here's the new stuff we're putting out. Here's what's kind of coming off. It's just like a press release, almost like a 25-minute long press release. That's all they need. Here's what we're working on. Here's what's coming out. Here's what's going off. Done.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, there's no reason to even bother.
Nope.
And granted, you know, I'll miss it, but at the same time, it just outlived its welcome.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree. It's done. It's like I said, this horse has been beaten to death, and they have it on life support now. They just need to pull the plug and call it good. So.
Yep. So, as always, you can hit us up on all the social medias. Let us know if we're completely wrong and E3 should continue on and on and on forever. Let us know who you think had the best showing, what games you're excited for. And as always, like it, share it, and subscribe.
Yeah, and we'll have the links below, as we have to get used to saying now, and on all of this stuff. Links will be down below and above the comments. So be sure to find us. We're on the socials. We're everywhere. And we'll see you guys around again pretty soon.
Yep. Catch you later.
Catch you later, guys.